Good morning. How's everybody doing? So before I begin, I'm going to mention our sponsor, Ratchet Clothing. By now you all know Ratchet's a clothing company out of the UK. I'll put a link down below. They have clothing for men, women, and children, various prints. Go check them out. So today's story is one that bothers me a little bit. The person involved I considered a friend of mine, but obviously that was not the case. I'll explain to you what took place. So one day I was driving. I had to go see my captain. That was Big John Castellucci in Staten Island. I was coming from Long Island. I lived in Long Island at the time, and I was driving to Staten Island. On the way there, around the Bell Parkway, for those of you who know, I got a telephone call from Anthony Guzzo. Anthony Guzzo was not only a member of our crew, Anthony, at that time, I considered to be a dear friend of mine. So Anthony asked where I was. I told him I was on my way to Staten Island to see Big John. He said, before you go there, can you stop at my house? At that time, Anthony was living with his wife in Staten Island. So when I got to Staten Island, I pulled up to Anthony's house. I rang the bell and waited for him to come down. He finally came down and he had a bunch of paperwork in his hand. He explained to me that his wife received a letter asking if my mother worked at the Pearl Room. The Pearl Room was a restaurant in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn on 3rd Avenue that Anthony's wife and her son owned. Now, prior to this, I had Anthony put me on a payroll at the Pearl Room so that I could show some legitimate income. So I quickly figured out what took place and I explained it to Anthony. I had gone with my mother to co-sign a car lease for her. And when I filled out my paperwork, I put my employment as the Pearl Room. My mother had owed money to a business credit card from a business she no longer had. Instead of paying the card, she just didn't pay them, and they just kept calling and calling as bill collectors do. So that's what this was all about. I explained to him that when I went for the lease with my mother, our names are on the same paperwork, we have the same last name. Somehow something got screwed up, and that's why he must have got the letter. I said, Anthony, just tell your wife to fill it out and say my mother don't work there. So he turns around and says, well, we had to hire a lawyer. I says, a lawyer for what? He said, we had to hire a lawyer to take care of this. I says, why don't you just fill out the paperwork and send it in like I told you? He said, well, my wife handled it and she got all upset and she hired a lawyer. Again, I told him, Anthony, I don't know why you hired a lawyer. You didn't need to hire a lawyer. He says, well, anyway, the lawyer took $1,500 from us. I said, $1,500 to do what? So he says, I don't know. The whole thing's aggravated. I just want to know when I could get my money. I says, what money is that? He says, the $1,500. I says, and who are you getting the $1,500 from? He says, well, you. This was over you. I said, wait a minute, Anthony. I'm not giving you $1,500 for a lawyer that you decided to go get. So he says, oh, that's nice. Now I'm going to be at $1,500 for something that had to do with you. I said, Anthony, I never told you to go get the lawyer. You went and got the lawyer on your own. So we went back and forth for a couple of minutes. Finally, I was tired of it. I said, Anthony, do me a favor. Give me the paperwork. Let me take the paperwork and I'll get back to you. So he gave me the paperwork. I walked away, got in my car, and started driving to go see Big John. Now, Big John was waiting for me by his cigar lounge. It was called the Cigar Vault in Staten Island. It's on Page Avenue. By the time I got there, I was so aggravated. I walked in. He seen it on my face. He says, what's the matter? So I started to explain the whole story, and he was kind of laughing. I said, John, I got to tell you the truth. He's looking for $1,500. I'm not giving him 15 cents. Calm down. He says, listen, work it out with him. I said, John, I'm not working nothing out. I'm telling you because he's going to come over here complaining about this, and I'm letting you know right now I'm not giving him a dime. So I left that day. I drove back to Long Island and threw the paperwork on my table. So about a day or two later, I had to go back to Staten Island and meet up with Big John again. When I walked into the cigar lounge, the first thing John brought up was that Anthony came to see him about this incident. He said, listen, he was over here earlier today. He's crying about this $1,500. Why don't you work something out with him? I said, John, I'm not giving him a dime. He said, listen, use your friends, work it out, give him $50 a month. I said, John, I'm not giving him a dime. I told you that already. He said, listen, I don't want to have to make a decision. Please don't make me have to make a decision on this. I want you to work it out between the both of you. I said, all right, John, I'll work it out with him. And he looked at me and he laughed because he knows I wasn't going to give Anthony a dime. Now, the reason I brought this up to Big John in the first place, I knew that Anthony was going to go to him with it, and I was right. So at some point that day, I left Staten Island, I went back to Long Island, and I went over to the table and I started looking at the paperwork. So basically the paperwork was copies of the originals that were sent to Anthony's wife. I looked up the company's name, and it was a bill collecting company out of Long Island. It was too late to call there. I was going to call there the next day. As I was putting the paperwork back, I noticed a green card in there, and I pulled it out, and it's when you mail somebody something, return receipt requested, that green card, and lo and behold, it was made out to the company. So Anthony's wife sent the letter back, certified mail or whatever that green card is. Anthony mistakenly gave me that mail receipt, but sadly, it proved to me there never was a lawyer involved in this. I remember laying in bed that night, unable to sleep, thinking, how could Anthony do this to me? I thought he was a friend of mine. So the next morning I got up, showered, shaved, and dressed, gathered up the paperwork with that card, got in my car, and headed back to Staten Island. I called Big John on the way driving to Staten Island, and I asked him if he was going to be at the cigar lounge. He said he would meet me there. Now the cigar lounge was like our social club for our crew, our meeting place, and other crews as well, and also members from other families hung out there too. I was hoping that nobody was going to be there that day, and that it was just going to be John and I. When I got there, Big John was waiting for me. We were the only ones there. We sat down, and right away he says, don't tell me this is about the $1,500. I said, yeah. I said, I want to show you something. I hand him the paperwork. So he's going through all the paperwork, and he's trying to read it, but I got the card in my hand. I said, forget about all of that. I want to show you something. Take a look at this card. And I explained the whole thing to him, and he's just looking at me, and he looks down, and he's shaking his head. He says, you better get him here. I said, oh, I'm going to call him right now. So before Anthony got there, Big John turned to me and he says, when he comes here, you deal with it. I don't want to get involved. I want to just explain that to you. First of all, he's the captain of our crew. Anthony and I are in his crew. Not only did Anthony lied to another friend, and that means another inducted member. Anthony is never supposed to do that, and Big John's supposed to pull him to the side and reprimand him. So while I was waiting for Anthony, I already knew what I was going to do with him. When he pulled up, I walked out of the cigar lounge, and I walked over to his car. I said to him, Anthony, let me ask you a question. Who's this lawyer that you hired? What's his name? He says, I don't know. My wife got him. So even though I knew it wasn't a lawyer that sent the card, I was going to let him off the hook, but I was going to catch him in another way. I said, Anthony, here, look at this. Look what your lawyer that your wife got. He sent the thing by mail, and he charged you $1,500. But I'm going to tell you what. Me and you, let's go in a car right now. Let's go to this guy's office, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to get you that $1,500 back. His whole face dropped. So he takes the card, and he looks at the card, and he says, this motherfucker. So now I know I'm going to ask him again. If Anthony says, come on, let's go, then I was wrong. I said to him, come on, Anthony, let's go grab this fucking lawyer. Let's get that $1,500 back. He turns to me, and he says to me, don't worry about it. I'll deal with it on my own. I walked away from Anthony that day and lost any respect that I ever had for him, and I knew that he was no longer my friend. And I lost even more respect for Big John because Big John never did anything about this whole situation. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. Like I mentioned in the beginning, it was one that upset me because I really considered Anthony a dear friend of mine, and he proved me wrong at that point. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you could do so down below. If you would like to subscribe to my other channel, the Unlimited Substance Podcast, I'll put a link for that in the description. I appreciate everyone who subscribed to both channels. Okay, enjoy the day and the rest of your weekend. Until the next time, ciao for now.